Welcome to FY Idaho. I'm your host, Elizabeth Allen Hodge, and with me today is Todd Hatfield, who is a candidate for Idaho State Controller. Welcome to the program, Todd.
Thank you, Liz.
Give us a little bit of your background. I know that you're a husband, father, a businessman, and an entrepreneur.
Yes. My wife and I, we have 4 children, and happy to announce that our oldest son just got back from Afghanistan just yesterday.
Wonderful.
From his second tour. We have 2 businesses we run. It's both commodity-based industries with timber and a log home building business, and also a flour mill using Idaho wheat products. And we started this company 2 years ago, and we're producing whole grain flour products and selling it in the grocery stores throughout Idaho now.
Well, that's great. And tell us a little bit about why you're in the race and what some of your concerns are.
Well, I'm like most people, I'm very concerned about the country, and I find as the federal government's going, so is the state, but we're misled to believe that everything is great in this state. The state has a lot of debt, is one thing we'd like to talk about, and then the other concerns with the land board is the land board going into buying commercial properties. And I've been quite passionate about the land board for several years because I've been involved through buying timber sales in the past. And have been on, kept up on the issues that have been going on with the Department of Lands.
Recently I read an article in the Lewiston Tribune by Joel Mills, who talks about one of the issues that a number of you are running on is that the state board's practice of using state-owned lands to generate as much funding as possible for public schools. That's not what I'm hearing you say. You're saying it's the land board's practice of?
Yes, the land board oversees the Department of Lands and the school endowments and the other endowments in the state. And we are obligated by the Constitution to make the maximum amount of funds that we can for these endowments, but it's how you do that.
So it's how. That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's how we do that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, and tell us how we do that, or how they do that.
Well, the founders set the endowments up that we are to generate revenue from timber sales, leasing land, grazing leases, in these aspects by using the commodities of the state. And how they make the maximum return is everything has to go through a public auction process, and it's also that they don't accept anything less than the appraised price. That's how it's described in our Constitution on how to make the maximum amount. There's nothing in our Constitution that says to go out and buy commercial properties and businesses and compete in the private sector.
So you're saying that is what they're doing?
That is what they're doing. Liz, they have 23 commercial properties that they've acquired in just the last few years. Everything from office buildings to storage unit businesses to industrial buildings. A bank building, they have a bar they owned in downtown Boise that they lease out to a company. That's what they're doing. And what's real scary is that starting, it's actually tomorrow, there's a sale. They're auctioning off the lease lots they have on Payette Lake and Priest Lake, and they'll be auctioning these off over the next couple of years. The land board's going to generate about $200 million, and they're taking that money to put into a fund which they will most likely use per their plan to buy more businesses to compete against Idaho. That's a lot of money and a lot of businesses they'll be able to acquire.
Okay, so your concern is that they're competing against the private sector, and not only are they competing against the private sector, but as I've researched this issue, it's my understanding that they don't pay the same property taxes or sales taxes or any taxes that the private sector does have to pay. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct. So they have an unfair advantage where they don't pay property taxes. And then it's a disadvantage to most counties in the state because when they buy a commercial or any building or property, like in Idaho Falls, they bought an industrial building over there. And that took $35,000 off the tax rolls for Bonneville County. So the citizens have to make that up. So it ultimately ends up in increases in taxes in the local communities.
Well, also, if you want to bring it down to bring it home, if you will. If I've got a donut shop and I'm paying my taxes and it's going to the state, and you're the state coming in and you're going to open a donut shop across from me, only you don't have to pay the property taxes that I have to pay. You don't have to pay the sales tax that I have to pay. I'm paying all of these taxes that are already going into toward what you're doing, and you're not having to pay them, and so I can't compete.
You can't compete. They could undersell you just to buy a little bit to draw the business away from you.
So are they limiting the things that they're buying? You're saying that they're buying commercial buildings, they're buying businesses?
No, if you read the asset management plan they've adopted, and there's another report called the Heartland Report in their mid-year strategy report, all these reports describe what they want to acquire. They have in their ski areas would be something they would acquire.
Oh my.
They even comments by staff members that even a fast food restaurant would be within sites for what they would acquire.
What's going to happen? What about grocery stores? What about?
It could be anything. There is no limit. It says not limited to these specific things. And even I think the Attorney General made a comment that a sawmill would be even a legitimate acquisition.
Okay. Now, one of the things that you said that caught my attention is you said we've been misled about the debt. We have a balanced budget policy in this state that we have to balance the budget. The legislature, when I was in the legislature, the way they did it was if a department came and asked for a certain amount of money and the legislature said, this is the amount we're going to give you, then if they overspent the next year, because we had to have a balanced budget, they would bring a supplemental and tell us how much they overspent, and we would have to cut them a check for that, so we'd have a balanced budget, which never seemed, I always voted no on those things. It never made sense to me. So tell me what they're doing now that you think it misleads people in terms of our debt and the fact that we're supposed to have a balanced budget.
Well, the whole concept of the balanced budget implies that we don't have debt. And so when they talk about the general fund, that's what they're talking about. But what we have is separate component units within the state, the Idaho Housing Authority and the Bond Bank Authority. And what they're doing is they're issuing bonds to acquire this debt. And a lot of it will go to one type of bonding is the GARVI bonds. That stands for Grant Anticipation Revenue Vehicle. That's we're taking on this debt in hopes of the federal government giving us a grant in the future to pay off that debt. Others were for the expansion of the Boise Stadium, the Broncos Stadium a couple years ago. We took on a couple $100 million of debt for that. So these are the things going on. This is all long-term debt. 12 years ago, Idaho didn't have any debt at all in this state.
No debt.
No debt. We weren't allowed to. But now they did a constitutional amendment in 1998, and that's allowed the state to do this, take on this debt outside of the general fund. So this, to me, this is unacceptable to be financing the desires of today and putting it on the backs of our children.
So we no longer have a balanced budget requirement.
We have the balanced budget requirement, but they've I guess worked it around that the component departments, these departments aren't part of the general fund. So they're separate from the general fund, but they still apply to Idaho's debt.
Okay. One of the things that I've been asking candidates is the oath of office is to my way of thinking, is a pretty solemn oath. I'm going to read to you right fast what the 1828 dictionary by Noah Webster said about the oath, and it's what we're supposed to be considering now. It's not a modern oath. It hasn't changed, and in terms of upholding the Constitution. According to Noah Webster, it says an oath is a solemn affirmation or declaration made with an appeal to God for the truth of what is affirmed. The appeal to God in an oath implies that the person requests God's vengeance and renounces God's favor if the declaration is false. If the declaration is a promise, the person invokes the vengeance of God if he should fail to fulfill it. So with that understanding of just how solemn it is and the fact that you have the sacred trust of the people, if you're elected and you take an oath of office, how do you plan to uphold that oath?
By following the Constitution. You know, you're to defend the Constitution, not to make up your own interpretations of the Constitution.
So you don't look at it as a living document?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. And it even goes so far, I mean, that we need to address this because a lot of, I know even on the county levels, they've even changed it from defending the Constitution to I will follow it to the best of my ability. So this is going on right here in this state.
To the best of my ability can
Yes.
mean a lot of different things.
It sure can,
can't it?
yes.
Okay, so you're saying that you will uphold your oath of office to uphold the
Yes.
Constitution. Okay, now if people want to get hold of you, how can they do that?
They can visit my website, toddhatfield.com. That's TODDHATFIELD.com.
Okay, we've got about a few minutes left. What types of things do you want if somebody were here right now, a voter, and you wanted to get something across to them, what would you say is very important that they understand?
Well, first off, back to the debt, I don't think we mentioned how much debt the state has. It's $1.4 billion of debt in the state, which amounts... Billion with a B.
Okay.
It's reported in the financial statement as $1,400 million. So it's an attempt to mislead the public. These are the things that people need to be aware of.
And how can they check this out, Todd? Because that is an important discrepancy.
Yeah, boy, you have to want to look at the financial statement of the state.
Okay.
The annual financial
Will you
report.
make that available on your website so that they can see that?
It's available on the state controller's webpage.
Oh, good.
You can go on there and read it there.
Okay.
It's about 150, 170 page document, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yes. And the other big thing is that we cannot go down this road of the state, allowing the state to buy businesses to compete against the private sector. This is an affront to liberty where, you know, the state is supposed to be protecting our rights to work and to have our own businesses, not be interfering and competing against us.
So you're saying it's not the proper role?
It's not the proper role of government at all.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the program, Todd.
Thank you, Liz.
This is Todd Hatfield, candidate for the Idaho State Controller. I'm Elizabeth Allen Hodge. Thanks for joining us.